continuously listening and trying to understand what's happening and where are things going so that you can take advantage of that. And so demand sensing is really about, you know, these questions. What's the benefit that you want to deliver? What is the benefit that's needed? It's not necessarily about what product, it's about what is needed by the consumer or the customer that you're targeting. It's all about who. So really understanding who's that ideal consumer or customer, who's that ideal user, who is the target market, where is this problem as far as the who, where is this person located, and you know, how are they having the issue? So how does the product service deliver the benefit? So based on the what and the who, how might you deliver the benefit that's needed? And then the other question that needs to be answered is, how is your way of delivering this benefit better than the options that are currently available? And also, this is about asking how much. So how much will it cost in total? How much do you need to sell? So it's really about making sure that whatever this idea is, that it's viable from a business perspective, that it's feasible from a technical perspective, and also that it is desirable from a customer or user perspective. So that's what demand sensing is.
So we're going to dive into a case study just to try and bring this all, you know, closer to home. So I'm going to talk about a local company, a local restaurant chain now called Taste of Belgium. I hope everybody on the call today has actually been to a Taste of Belgium, eaten one of their wonderful waffles. Sorry, ignore my dog. Sorry.
Excited about the waffles. I think
apparently
they must know that my dog loves the leftovers from Taste of Belgium.
I'm sorry, I should have thrown her outside. But she, the idea of Taste of Belgium actually came about when Jean-Francois Flachet actually left Nielsen. So he and I were co-workers together at Nielsen. He's actually a statistician by training. And a fantastic statistician, I should say. But he always had a passion for food, and he was really keen to start his own business, right? So he had this entrepreneurial bug in him. He is originally from Belgium. And so back in 2007, he decided to leave Nielsen and start this business. And he started small. He started with basically nothing more than a food cart in Findlay Market. And he actually kind of tagged on to an existing store. He was sort of working out of the back of the store, like not a store, but you know, right there in the farmer's market at Findlay Market, and just started selling waffles. And so that was the start of Taste of Belgium, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember when they were just the equivalent of almost like the equivalent of like a taco truck that just you know, testing, you know, optimizing. I think he had a few failures early on, but just, you know, zeroed in and just found an incredible niche. And then when I left for Europe for 8 years and actually got my share of indulgent waffles, although frankly, none of them were as good. When I came back, I couldn't believe how much his operation had mushroomed.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, you know, you may wonder if you're looking, hindsight's 2020, right? So we can look at that business model that he's launched and say, well, yeah, of course, you know, Belgian waffles, what's not to love? But if you go into a new product launch, you actually know that you have an infinite range of choices. You can go in any direction. So his passion for food could have taken him so many places, right? I'm throwing up 2 examples of if I would have just said waffle to you, you might have pictured a plate of waffles drowned in syrup. You might have said, my competitive alternative is a plate of pancakes. I'm being kind of facetious here, but the idea here is just to demonstrate that in truth, when you think about new products and innovation, your choices start out being very limitless. So that image that Elisa presented before, the sort of like fork in the road, you don't really know. Should you turn left or should you turn right? Should you go down one path or a different path? And so let's talk about how we actually build out that idea development. So we basically start by having a structure, right? And we call that structure concept development. So what that means is just having a written description of what, who, how, instead of, and how much. Those 5 questions that Elisa teed up before. And you should think about when you're at this early stage, you want to think about this idea of divergence, meaning you generate as many ideas as you think makes sense. You have a bunch of them and you write them down. So let me talk, and this is really goofy, but I'm going to talk about this idea of writing things down. You can do it electronically, right? You can type it up in a Word document. That is fine. But what I'm advocating is that you preserve the thought process over time. Don't just edit and write over your ideas. Actually document each idea and document what the thought process was. And that is important because as you progress down this path, as you go down this launch, you will find yourself revisiting assumptions that you made earlier. So you might kind of think, I should launch, waffles that are served on a plate. And maybe after you do some demand sensing, you might look back at that assumption and say, you know what, I need to rethink that. But preserving all the thoughts that went into your development actually enables you to more easily kind of constantly recycle back and go, let's just poke at that one more time. So you'll have many different ideas under consideration, and those ideas will start as very vague ideas.
And this is very relevant to everybody as you're kind of thinking through your pitch competition concepts. I mean, you're trying to figure out what's that big idea that potentially is going to make it to the finish line, get the big prize money, and writing that concept early on is absolutely critical, because part of the exercise is just taking things off the table, right? It's like, how do you quickly rule out certain possibilities? So by the time you get to the major competition, you've got your best foot forward.
Exactly. And then as time goes, exactly as Pete said, those ideas will become more fleshed out as you do your listening research. And a big part of new product launches is also about pivoting, right? I don't want to re-emphasize this enough, but pivoting means you started down a path, and you, after more listening, more research, you go, I actually need to turn back a little bit. I need to revisit. So it's this constant sort of cycling and thinking and evolving, but then also building out that idea so it becomes more and more fleshed out. So the actual concept for Taste of Belgium, if you could click through these, Elisa. Thank you. Go ahead and click through all of them. Thank you. So what he ended up, what Jean-Francois Flachet ended up doing was his concept, his product was an on-the-go food that could be served in any meal occasion, not just breakfast, and not just as a dessert, and not just as a snack, but all of those things. And in fact, he's incorporated dinner as well. If you've sat in one of his restaurants, he serves waffles and fried chicken together, right? So it's actually all the meals. And it is targeted to people who enjoy food. I said baked treats here, but really it's food. Now, the how is what the product is. So notice the what is not a product. It's actually the what is the benefit or the need that you're trying to address. And the how is the actual product, because we want to do it this way because your problem that you're trying to solve in step one can be solved through many different types of products. So you always want to separate these two things out. Don't get hung up on a specific product, right? So his how ends up being an authentic Belgian waffle made with a specialty recipe and specialty equipment that's sold for on-the-go eating. So that's his how, but again, recognize that you can solve your need state through many different types of products. And then the alternatives, the instead of, his competitive set are donuts or cookies or regular waffles and infinite variety of other food types. But the how much, this is super cool. So again, if you've ever had one of his waffles, you know that they're not cheap. So it's $4.50 for a single waffle and $12 for four. And getting to that price point is what enables him to be financially viable and such a success. So here's his final product. It's like, again, this on-the-go waffle or a bundle pack of 4 for $12. And he's now selling these things in Kroger. It's pretty amazing. So after only a handful of years, he's gone from a little stand in Findlay Market to selling in Kroger. Pretty cool.
It's amazing.
It really is.
It's just incredible.
All right, so we're going to break out some calculators here. So I think it's really important for everyone in any role that you go down to be pretty comfortable with a spreadsheet. This is important because, back to a point Elisa made about financial viability, you just won't succeed if you can't kind of make the numbers work, right? So it's really important. Some just general stats, only 20% of new businesses survive after their second year in the United States. That's a Bureau of Labor and Statistics statistic, right? So that's a known fact. Only 20% of new businesses survive. And actually in the world of new products, only 9% of new products survive past the second year. And that stat is actually driven more by big companies. We're not even talking about small businesses. So the small business failure rate is for new products is even higher. So you want to go in kind of with your eyes wide open around the financials. If you do this well, then this will actually enable you to have long-term success. So Abby and Zand have a copy of this Excel file. I recommend you kind of use this because I've embedded all the formulas in here to help make it easier for you. And I always, this is my format for Excel files. I always keep my inputs, so I separate the input from the formula, and the inputs are always flagged in yellow. And then the output is flagged in green. This is my color coding I've used for 30 years. So you'll see an input cell you put in as, again, these yellow cells. So we're going to start right down the line here. I'm going to walk through how you think about your sort of financials, right? And by the way, this is a very, very simplistic example. As you get more sophisticated, you can certainly blow this out. But I'm just going to keep things simple for now. So first off, we start with something called cost of goods, and you'll hear big companies call this COGS, right? Cost of goods sold. The cost of goods is a variable cost, which means that for every item that you sell, there may be a cost associated with that sale, right? So that is a variable cost. It's the cost of the specific item that you are delivering. So it's a per unit cost. And here I'm going to say this is me guessing, by the way, these are not the actual Taste of Belgium financials. This is me guessing at his numbers, but how much does it cost to make a waffle? Let's say 20 cents per waffle. That's the flour. He's got some specialty sugar. He's got the plastic, the plastic, wrap that he uses to actually hand it to customers as they walk away. So all of those costs, let's call it 20 cents. And let's say that when he initially started out, he was shooting to sell 50 a week, because this was him just sort of working on the weekends in Findlay Market. And you should be conservative with this initial number. So start small. Don't assume you're going to sell 1 million right out of the chute, right? So let's say 50 cents. So that multiplies. So here's where my formulas, I put kind of this number per unit times how many. So this will end up being the cost of goods per week. So now the total cost is $10 per week, right? That's the cost of goods. And then you're going to have some kind of delivery costs. So this might be your retailer fees, your gas, whatever it costs to actually physically get your product to the consumer. And here I've put in, I'm assuming it's $100 a week. This might be the cost that I had to pay, or Jean-Francois had to pay, to the Findlay Market store so that he could set up his little food cart in the back of the store, right? So if you go down the path of e-commerce, let me tell you right now, those fees are high. So this is a really important thing. You don't assume that you can just sell things on e-commerce easily, right? There's actually, Amazon charges 15% of your retail price, plus they charge you for warehousing and delivery and yada, yada, yada. So definitely keep an eye on this delivery cost. And then you're going to have a fixed cost. So the fixed cost is basically the investment that you are spending, that you're having to pay for just to get set up. So in this instance, Taste of Belgium, he had to actually import these specialty waffle makers. They're like 120 pounds. You can't just buy them at your local, Bed Bath & Beyond. This is like a very specialty piece of equipment. Plus he needed the actual food cart thing that he was using to deliver, and a number of other things. So this fixed cost, you'll hear big companies call this CapEx, or capital expenditure. CapEx is typically a big ticket amount, and you're going to amortize, sorry, I'm using a lot of accounting terms, but you're going to take that fixed cost and you're going to spread it over some period of time. So in this instance, I put in $1,500 as my fixed cost, which is the price I had to pay to buy my specialty waffle irons and all that stuff. And I'm going to spread this over 2 years. So I'm counting everything per week. So this ends up being divided by 104 weeks. So that's how I get to a $14.42 allocated CapEx per week. And then I might have some advertising costs. So this is your social media. You got to get the word out there that you exist, that your product exists, and you want to draw people in, right? So social media, your handouts, your word of mouth, whatever, radio, whatever form of advertising you choose to go down. And this, again, you're going to put in your investment costs and then spread it out per week. So here I end up with, I'm assuming handouts. I'm going to assume kind of a simple kind of advertising cost. So let's say it only cost me $500 to make a bunch of flyers. That's $9.62 a week. And then labor costs. So I'm not going to pay myself anything. This is the world of entrepreneurship. We don't pay ourselves anything. So that's a zero, right? But as soon as you start hiring somebody who's not your friends and family, that recognize you need to put that in. And so you add all this up per week and notice now we had $134 in total expenses per week. Now I've only assumed that I'm going to sell 50. So that means my total per unit cost is $2.68. And I want to put in, I want to make money. If I sell this item, if I sell my waffles for $2.68, I will not make money. I will be breaking even. And that is a giant waste of time for me because I didn't pay myself anything, right? There's an opportunity cost here. So I need to make sure I make money. And that I've assumed a 40% margin. So this margin, this percent can vary, but typically, and Elisa may have different experience here, but what I've typically seen is a profit margin somewhere between 20 to 50%, because you still have to cover for taxes and other operating expenses that I haven't even included yet. And so there's a bunch of other stuff. So you just give yourself a little elbow room in here. So if we assume a 40% margin, then this would end up being the price point you need to sell. And lo and behold, it's that $4.50 number you saw earlier. So this is a fluke. This is me making up numbers. Again, this is not the actual financial model that Jean-Francois used, but it does help you kind of understand how he would have gotten there, right? How he would have gotten a $4.50 number.
I would also add that, you don't have to be perfect in your assumptions because you're launching a new business and you're going to learn as you go. But I will say that if you're looking to raise any money, even from mom or dad or a neighbor, like getting these basics in place, that you have a model for factoring in, cost of goods sold and other kind of, it's going to build your credibility enormously. But don't stress out that it's got to be absolutely, perfect. I think people want to know that you are, bringing some level of financial rigor to a business process, and you can adjust your, adjust your assumptions as you go. Kathy, will they get this spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Abby and Zan both have it, and they can.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
We'll make this available.
And so the thing to build on Pete's point, this is such a great point, Pete. Recognize that just like your written concept, this should be a living document. You're not going to get these numbers right out of the chute. It won't happen. This is going to be something where, as you do your demand sensing and your listening, you're going to actually refine these things. You will constantly go back and revisit this and just constantly work these numbers. And, I do this in my own life, frankly. I have my personal budget. I do this just even to manage my personal, what I bring in, what I spend, and make sure those things even out. I teach my kids to do this. So it is really important to kind of look at this as a living, working document.
Great.
I want to show you something else I buried in here. So if you unhide, there's a little group button right here. So go ahead and click on that when you get into the spreadsheet. This is the second part of the sheet that is really important, which is to play with your what if scenarios. So what if scenario just means, you remember we made this assumption, right? That we're going to sell 50 of these things per week. And if we do that, we will make good money. If we sell, so back to our Taste of Belgium case study, if we sell 50 a week and we sell them at $4.50 a piece, we're going to make a 40% margin because we structured our financials to do that. What if, God forbid, we only sold 10? I want you to kind of know the downside. This is called the downside scenario, and you'll see an upside scenario. But when you look at these numbers, so let's start with the 50. When we multiply everything out, this is the absolute amount of money you will be putting in your pocket every week, right? If we sold 50 waffles, we'll make $89.36, which is awesome, per week. Woohoo! If, God forbid, you only sold 10, you will be losing money. And guess what? Initially, this may be the track. So you're going to start small. That very first week, you may be losing money. Then as you go, hopefully you'll sell more. Maybe you'll get to 100. Look at 100, we're now making 302. And if we're selling more than 100, you start making some real money. So this is a way for you to kind of gauge, again, this, the term we use is upside or downside contingencies. And you kind of want to make sure, you know, back to this idea of kind of going with some financial acumen, being able to know how much risk you can stomach, right? How much can you deal with based on your business plan? Good, so let me stop. And obviously, if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in. All right.
Let's move on to the next section. I'll make sure we don't run out of time here. That was outstanding.
So these are some innovations in the world of e-commerce. I just want to throw these out there because, you know, e-commerce really changes the game as it relates to new products. These are just some ideas or new products that have launched. They actually all launched on Amazon and have subsequently done so well on Amazon that they're now moving into a brick and mortar world. I guess the one I want to just maybe talk about briefly is this last one, this Mutterfinger. It's literally a dog toy this big with a squeaky in the middle. And it's so basic. And what I love about it is it's a husband and wife. She does all the designing and he does all the operations. And together they've like formed this business. It's around their dog and cat toys that they've made, and, you know, real simple, really simple idea, and has done very well. But again, financially, you got to make sure you can cover all those darn Amazon fees. So they baked those into their launch plan. Next slide, please. So there are pros and cons of launching in e-commerce. I'll talk about Amazon being the biggest. And sorry, Elisa, I have two images if you wouldn't mind clicking. Thank you. So, so these two products that I'm showing here are actually, it was funny because I was consulting with a very big company. I won't name who, but it's one of these, you know, Fortune 50 companies, and they came saying, hey, we want to come up with this really innovative breakthrough functional food product that will help women, you know, they could snack and it will also enhance their beauty because it's got all these functional benefits, blah blah. And I went on Amazon and I said, guess what, there's actually already 5 products out there that do what you are describing. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing that this company is talking about launching a 6th one, but it's good to know that you're not actually paving the way you think you are, right? So the world of Amazon has enormous reach. There's 215 million people going to Amazon every month. But if you picture that as your own store, just picture having a little store, right? Pete's, you know, I don't know, Pete's food truck. Imagine 215 million people showing up at your doorstep every single month. And that's what Amazon is. So you have lots of reach, lots of data. So the ability to then benchmark against these other products that are already out there to say, are you as good as they are? Are you selling as many as they are? That helps you kind of gauge whether you're on track. And then there's ways within Amazon to accelerate sales, like early reviewer and social media, subscribe and save, you name it. Fulfillment's a big piece of e-commerce. So actually sending the product out, you know, getting it to your end consumer. And Amazon fulfillment can be an option. Again, it's pricey. It's expensive to have Amazon fulfill, but certainly you don't have to do it yourself. But the negative, of course, is it is expensive. So anywhere between 15 to 20% of your retail price goes back to Amazon, plus the fulfillment fees, plus the warehousing fees, plus the advertising fees. There's a lot of fees, and it's complicated. So there's a ton of rules around it. But it is certainly an option if you're thinking about launching your own dog toy business. This is certainly an option. And, but just bear all that in mind.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you, Kathy. That was a really great case study. So we have an audience poll. We would love to know what are ways of listening. So if you guys could just think about what are some different ways that you can come up with that you could listen to the marketplace to understand those questions that we laid out earlier.
And go ahead and type your responses in the chat if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so someone said social media. That's a great answer. Anyone else? Yep, looking at trends, customer reviews, ratings and reviews. Thank you, Pete. Yeah, surveys, reviews.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those are all great answers. These are some additional answers that we came up with. So you could talk to your friends and family, you could talk to fellow shoppers, experts, professional users, strangers. So you could have you could either go up and just ask some questions, or you could have a structured interview. Those are called intercepts, by the way, where you just go up and you just ask people to give you their opinion of something, or to ask them what their needs are in a specific area. You can check out the competition, see what they're doing. You could read product reviews, look at social media. You could participate in affinity groups. So if you know that your target user is in a specific demographic or has a specific lifestyle, you can join affinity groups where you think that person might be, so you can listen in there as well. Someone also said post-purchase surveys. Those are also very good. Influencers, that's another great way of listening to people. So I just wanted to play this, this TikTok video. TikTok is social media, of course, so that's another great way of listening. So I'm just going to play this video really fast, just so you can get a quick glimpse of what you can learn on social media.
It's baby products. Okay, so these are dry wipes by a company called Cub, made out of 100% American cotton. And in case you didn't know, that makes these 100% biodegradable. And stated by the cotton pads because these are the perfect made for labor. I use them on virtually every surface in my house, and I love that I can trust them online and then send them in. It's a perfect mixture of sturdy but really soft. I have replaced my hand towels, my tissues, my napkins, and my paper towels. And wait for it, the best part of all of this is they're reusable. Just rinse it, wring it, and it's good to go. Visit Dog.shop and type in the code CF20 and you'll get 20% off their cotton and alcohol packs for all those weird surfaces that need disinfecting these days.
So you can get a really good understanding just from looking at that video. It gives you so many different things to think about as far as what someone's needs might be, how they might be using a product. It shows maybe things that may not be working for a given product. So that really, really helps with understanding where you could potentially go and what the potential benefits could be for designing something new.
And for those of you that are thinking about, something along the sustainability track as part of your pitch competition, TikTok is, I think, the world's greatest focus group. I just think there's an ingenuity, there's just there's kind of almost like a green street smarts that these, content creators, and I'm sure many of you are them, bring to the table. But again, if you're kind of looking for that quick, low cost, no cost focus group, or even the start of a brainstorm, I do think a lot of those videos, the how-to videos, the alternative ways of using products are just invaluable, infinitely revealing of brand value.
Yeah, it feels like there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of those types of videos available. So it's a pretty great place to find uh, demands, benefits, and that sort of thing.
And even paying attention to, one of the things that surprised me is things that I thought were kind of like, just like maybe a concept that I didn't really relate to, but when I saw the sheer amount of audience that aggregated around it, that can also inform your assumption that, oh, there's a really big need. This really hit an appeal driver among I worked at Nestle where we would desperately try to create video content that might get, I don't know, a couple thousand likes through social media. And we would be totally humbled by these young content creators that would get millions, and they just nailed the insight faster. And that's the beginning of listening.
I agree. Okay, so we have another poll question. Please add your answers to the chat. So what are some ways of trend watching that you guys can think of? Oh, hashtags. Ooh, that's a really good one. Looking at purchase behavior, that's a great one too. Prices. Yeah, so these are some ways that we came up with. Trend aggregators. So there are actually websites online where you can go and see what trends are happening in different marketplaces. You can see some pretty cool products. You can understand consumer, like just insights in general from these websites. So Trend Hunter is a really great one that I love looking at. The Amazon bestsellers list is really good. This is a place where you can understand who are the best sellers in different categories, and you can drill down pretty far in understanding these companies. Futurist, you can follow Futurist on LinkedIn or other social media sites. They have really good understanding of, things that are happening, external forces that may be causing trends to go one way or another. You can look at app downloads and understand the popularity of different apps to understand what people's needs might be and what the trends are. There's some like CB Insights and provides investment trends. So there's PitchBook, which may or may not be accessible. So there are different places where you can figure out where are investments happening. There's also Google Trends, where you can search to understand what people are searching for. That gives some insight on trends and needs. And social media is another great one. Okay, so we have one last poll question, and this is, what are ways of demand sensing? Anyone? Okay, sales, that's great. That's a great one. So you can understand what products are selling and then figure out based on that what you could potentially launch and what's needed. Social media, again, social media is going across all three. Being out of stocks, on products. So yeah, this is a good one too. Looking at the shelf, understanding what's not in stock. That's a really good insight on what's needed versus what's not even available. Focus groups, reviews. Yeah, I agree. So for demand sensing, you can also look at small batch trials. So, making a small batch or some type of prototype and then seeing how much of that sells. You can do A/B testing, which is where you compare two different prototypes or two different ideas at one time in the marketplace to see which one is most popular. Samples, product reviews, customer feedback, sales, and then, yeah, competitive benchmarking. So those are all great ways of doing demand sensing. And now we have time for Q&A. So I will stop sharing. So any questions or comments or confessions?
Reactions to any of this?
Yeah.
Any ideas that you're currently cooking up that you want us to react to or give you some ideas on content optimization or concepts?
First of all, I just wanted to say a large thank you to Mr. Blackshaw, Mrs. Smith, and Mrs. Cummins. Your words today were very inspiring. I just had one question from what we learned today. So when we were learning about Amazon specifically, I saw that there were like, it said something about rules and penalties, like new rules on Amazon. So I was wondering if you could give me an example of
Yeah.
how.
They unfortunately are constantly issuing new rules. It's like a daily occurrence. So for example, the most recent one is, this just got issued last week. If you are selling any kind of nutritional supplement, there's certain words you cannot say anymore. And if you say those words in your copy, your listing will be suspended, meaning they literally come in and just put the listing on hold and consumers cannot see it. So it is constant. And so there's, there's things around, so there's a lot of rules around what you can and cannot say on your listing. There's rules around what the images need to look like. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's long. It's probably 100 pages long if you had to read the rules from top to bottom.
So is there like a manual or something Amazon updates on its website?
Yeah, it's called the TOC. It's the I forget, terms and conditions, basically. Yeah. So, and you have to kind of stay on top of it for the categories that you're launching.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
health, if I can give you any advice, health supplements and any kind of PPE, so any kind of face mask, anything that has to do with health and safety has the highest level of scrutiny. CBD oils are also completely off limits. Can't sell those on Amazon, can't sell alcohol on Amazon. So there's those kinds of products are really scrutinized. And yeah, we can go from there.
Thank you.
Great question. And thank you for that expression of thanks. You teach, I need to have you teach my kids manners. What else? Other kind of questions, comments?
There's a question in the comment
Yeah.
so from Alina here. So Alina asks, for a service-related business that doesn't have costs, such as manufacturing or shipping, how would you edit the spreadsheet? Would the same rules apply? So great question. Thank you for asking that. For service-related business, so let's just say you're launching an app, right? That's what Centrifuge is sort of known for, is helping tech startups. And if you're building something that's a service or a technology, you're still going to have the cost of development. So I would call that your CapEx. Your development cost would sit under CapEx or fixed costs. And then any of the costs associated with delivering that service would also need to be in there. And then depending on what kind of service, so let's say it's a lawn mowing service, you are going to have cost of goods for your lawnmower because you have to pay for the gas and the cost of transporting your lawnmower from house to house, right? So there will be some things that are variable costs. Again, this idea of you want to try and separate out what's a variable cost that's associated with each time you deliver this service or product. We'll call that a cost of goods. And then anything that's just like, no matter what, it's one lump sum, you paid for the development of that app, or you had to buy the lawnmower, that's your fixed cost. Separate those two things out, and then you should be good to go.
Any other questions?
Oh, specifically for Amazon. Do you know how the return service works? Because I know like some companies, you have to agree to their returns, but you get like 2 months to return something. And who covers the cost on that return?
Great question. So in Amazon, there's two different kinds of fulfillment. So you'll see one is fulfilled by Amazon. When you go into an Amazon listing, you'll see whether it's shipped by Amazon or shipped by the seller, right? So when it says shipped by Amazon, that means it's actually being delivered by Amazon and they will take care of the returns. So that's actually one of the benefits of working with Amazon. If it's shipped by the seller, like you're shipping this yourself, then you are going to be responsible for handling those returns. And unfortunately on Amazon, back to the question that was asked earlier about rules, they do have some rules around making sure you have the returns managed in a reasonable amount of time. I think it's like 1 to maybe 2 weeks, but generally 1 week, ideally even faster than that. So you would give a refund almost right away and then manage the return. So.
Because I had a specific example, like I bought a mic, right? And I contacted, the clip was broken when I got it. And I contacted the manufacturer, the company that sold it, and they would not give me a return, but Amazon would.
Yeah.
Because I bought
Yes.
it.
Exactly. When you buy through Amazon, the returns are all managed through Amazon. And then trust me, Amazon will charge the manufacturer back for it. So the manufacturer is going to pay for it.
Any other questions from our two esteemed?
Yeah,
One
let's
more
like,
question in the
yeah.
chat. Yeah, go right ahead.
yes, there's one more. If a startup's, and this is from Lance, if a startup's target audience is corporations, is there a good way to determine how those corporations would be willing to pay? For example, what % of their project budget would corporations be willing to spend on the service being offered?
Elisa, you want
Yeah.
to take a stab at that, or you want me to?
Yeah,
And Pete probably can as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the question better, but I think the question is how much would the corporation be willing to pay for a service is my guess. And okay, so I think it's not about the percentage of the project budget. It's more about the value that you're offering to the corporation compared to the value, I guess, and thinking about that in terms of price, like how much would they be willing to pay? What is the going rate typically in the marketplace? And what's the actual value you're adding? So, and then the other question is, and this is like all about selling. The other question is, what is the cost or price? I guess it's cost of the corporation not doing what it is that you're offering. So you have to frame things up that way. So it's a little bit different from selling to a consumer, you know, or doing B2C. When you're doing B2B, you have to think about things in those terms. So it may cost you like $3,000 to deliver a service, but a corporation may be willing to pay $20,000 for the service. So you have to think about it a little bit differently. So it's thinking about it in terms of your competition, and also thinking about it in terms of the actual value that you're delivering. So overall, how do you make sure you add up those benefits for the company and clearly define those and articulate those, and also articulate what the company is losing by not leveraging your service? That's my answer to that.
It's an excellent question, actually, because obviously I gave you a spreadsheet that is a cost-based pricing approach. So cost-based pricing is a very limited way of doing it. I gave you a very, very simplistic example because in truth, as Elisa said, if you're selling something that's really unique and differentiated and it's adding a lot of value, you would actually price using a value-based approach, which is more complicated because it's more nebulous and harder to wrap your arms around. Great question though, Lance.
Yeah, it could be that and this is quickly because I think we're out of time. It could be that the corporation could lose millions a year, or is losing millions a year, or it could be saving millions a year. I guess is another way to think about it if they use your service, like thinking about it that way. So just kind of flipping the script a little bit. Okay, and I think we're out of time. Thank you for all of your questions, guys.
Thank you.
So,
Oh.
go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really important topic. We're going to make it available to you. I know we covered a lot, and some of it was a little bit more dense, but it's also essential knowledge. So treat this as kind of part of your evergreen toolkit. I'm so grateful to both of our esteemed speakers. They're the best of the best. And really appreciate your effort, and back to Abby.
Yeah, so like Pete said, thank you so much to Kathy and Elisa, and also you, Pete, for joining in on the session today. I know I personally got a lot out of it and was very insightful. So I will look forward to seeing what comes of this through our pitch competitions. I'd also like to thank the students for attending. It's really appreciated. I know if you're in Cincinnati, the weather is very great today. So we really appreciate you sticking with us for an hour to learn a little bit more. And it's just a final reminder, I've been spamming it in the chat, but please, please, please take that survey. If you have the time, we really appreciate any and all feedback. And this is actually our last session for the week. And we hope to see you next week for the pitch competition training on Monday at 10 a.m. And then we also have the power panel, the serial entrepreneur strikes again on Tuesday at noon. So we hope to see you all there. And in the meantime, we hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thanks again, guys.